Hey guys, Wave here. Sorry for this late upload, but I'm back. My computer is fixed now and I'm going to, do my promised video of ranting about bad teams. I want to be educational about this. I don't want to just insult these people or meme about them too hard. I'm going to give a more objective, perspective on it. I'm going to be a lot more gentle. I'm going to steer you to the direction of making this team better or what's actually wrong with this team. These teams anyway. So yeah, we'll be looking at TikTok. This is basically TikTok's Got Talent, I guess. So we're going to be looking at all the teams they used against this boss fight, the Aventurine boss. So from what I remember, the Aventurine boss fight in the story quest was Imaginary Resist, but I'm not going to be taking that too much into factor here. I also remember this boss got nerfed because the original version hits like a truck, and that really affects your team building. I will consider every one of these teams to be used before the nerf, so it's more excusable to die in this manner. So yeah, let's get started. First team, Fire Blazer, Dan Heng, Imbibe to Lune, Bailu, and Blade. Okay, so how do I say this? Starrail revolves around two team archetypes essentially. One is a hyper carry team, and two is a multi-carry team. So a hyper carry team is one person does all the damage, and the team and the entire team is revolved around that single person doing the most damage and buffing them. So something like Daunting and Barber to Lune with Yukong and Bronya, you get the drill. And a multi-carry team is something like this, where you have two carries and you usually have a team-wide buffer to buff all of them. It also could be a triple carry team, in which case you have three supports that support each other so hard that they become the carries. Like for example, anything with Robin basically becomes a 3-carry team. So this is a team that, to be quite honest, is not that bad looking at it, but there's no cohesion with this team. Fire Blazer and Bailu running 2 sustains is typically not gonna be the play, but I understand that this is a Aventurine boss, meaning that it hits really hard. And if you know anything about investment in these types of games, is that if you don't invest enough in your levels, you get one-shotted very easily because, enemy attacks actually scale off your level and how hard they hit. So that's also a factor. I can understand that why they would run 2 sustains in this fight, especially if they're a newbie or they don't actually want to commit much into their characters. So I see that. If this was Memories of Chaos, I'd be a lot more stricter, but I get it. I get the hustle. But Imbiber to Lune is a very hyper carry focused unit, and by that I mean if he isn't running hyper carry, he loses out on a lot of damage. Blade doesn't, because truthfully there's just not that many ways to buff him, so it's fine to put him as a sub DPS. But Dan Heng just isn't. I think you should just replace Dan Heng and Barry to Lune here with somebody else. Maybe Jing Liu, I don't know, but he's not a carry that works well with Blade, let's just say that. Also, to come into factor, HSR is very unique with one resource, the skill points. Dan Heng and Barber to Lune eats up a lot of skill points, which is fine in this team because Blade is a flexible type of unit where they don't spend a lot of SP, so it's fine in this team actually because they're basic spammers, so that's fine. But yeah, this is just replace Imbiber to Lune honestly, or replace Blade with Yukong, someone that's more carry compatible. Let's say that. Okay, next team. I actually cannot do this right now, which is a team of Acheron, Misha, Jingyuan, and Natasha. Oh god, there's a lot of things wrong with this team. This is a triple carry team, and none of them are buffing each other. So, to put an analogy here, let's say Acheron does 6 times or 9 times more damage with 2 supports that do not a lot of damage. If you remove those 2 supports and add DPS units, you get 1 times, 1 times, 1 times, so 3. Acheron is no longer dealing 9 times their damage because there's no supports. That's what's happening here basically. Especially because Acheron has a trace which straight up cuts her damage by 30% if you don't bring a Nihility character. Even at E2, she still needs a Nihility unit. Another factor that comes into play is that Acheron just cannot build stacks with this team. There's no debuff. I don't know where this bleed came from. Is that from Natasha? That's really funny. But there's no debuffs in this team, meaning Acheron's ultimate is moving like molasses. It's not activating a lot. Your other carries aren't suited for this either. Misha is actually very good for sub DPS support, but not Acheron. Acheron is a very hyper carry focused unit, or at least just Nihility double carries is a lot better than this. Misha can actually cut down the amount of sustain you need. Seeing as these two are dead, it's probably not enough for this boss. I don't actually remember how much sustain you need, but yeah, this could just be a skill issue. Never mind. Please focus, stick to one lane with either of these characters. Misha can stay with Jing Yuan if you can, but you kind of have to bring Ruan Mei as a team-wide support to balance that out. But yeah, I don't understand why people just using Misha because he matches the weaknesses. I mean, he's a good character for this fight, but I don't think people are using him for, you know, doing a lot of damage. Regardless, let's move on. There's kind of a pattern here with multi-carries. This got me Stressen, which is a team of Luocha, Fireblazer. At least the boss is 1%, so that's cool. Serval and Danheng and Barbertolune. Okay, well, there's an obvious problem here. Serval just doesn't do anything to this boss. I mean, she shreds toughness, that's cool, but she's Erudition and this is a single target fight. She's not Argenti, she's not really just doing anything in there. And in Barbertolune, I mean, a focus on Serval, more likely. But again, I'm taking the imaginary resist out of factor here. Just focus on either one of these two and bring a support like Tingian for both of them or something. Like, yeah. This guy's probably very low leveled and that's why he's struggling and using to sustain. So again, I'm not gonna... At least he 1% of it, so, you know, they're at least doing something right. Next is Bailu. Okay, Japard. Okay. Herta, Misha. Oh, Jesus. Sadly, this is just not Herta's fight. This isn't exactly a team issue as much as it's just a Herta issue. So yeah, replace Herta with like Pila or something. I don't know, but Herta is just not the right unit for this fight. Like this team, I could see this team working somehow in some other way of content with, you know, removing Japard for maybe like a more offensive support option, but not for this fight. This is a single target fight and Herta just doesn't do anything for it. Next, this is in Russian. I can't read that. Silver Wolf, Jinglia, Blade, Huohua. Okay, this is a good team. This is actually a very competent team. I've seen this used in Memories of Chaos. It clears very respectably. It's not perfect. You could replace Silver Wolf with Ruan Mei. Let's talk about why this team is good. There is not a lot of ways to buff Blade, and there's not a lot of ways to buff Jing Liu because they give themselves so many stats. In Blade's case, he is an HP scaler, so there's, you know, not a lot of buffs there for HP. However, both of them do not spend SP. Jing Liu's enhanced skill drains Blade's HP to fuel his talent. So, these two can be run together with virtually no SP problems because they're just so efficient at it. This 2 core is actually quite good. The problem is your support and your sustain. Now your sustain could be Fu Xuan, but I think Fu Xuan would have a bit of an issue with the HP drain being so strong that she kind of, you know, eats through it and can't heal through it. Huohua is actually pretty good as a sustain option, but as you can see with this screenshot right here, she's quite fragile compared to other healers that she might not be able to solo sustain for your team very well. You could probably replace Huohua with Luocha and would probably win with this team, but moving on to the support option, Silver Wolf. Silver Wolf is actually a good one here because, you know, single target. She doesn't need to skill spam all day, and even if she can, these two are efficient at, you know, skill, so, you know, it's whatever. Silver Wolf possesses one of the few things that could buff both Jingliu and Blade, which is defense down, vulnerability, res down, you know, all that good stuff. So this is, you can see that this is a very cohesive team, a very good team. The problem is Huohua. Huohua just isn't enough sustain for this fight, as you can see clearly. This team would have worked in almost every other form of content, just not this one because it just hits too hard for Huohua to handle. This is the best team so far, honestly. This is a good team. Moving on. When the HSR community comes TG to give advice, is that misspelling TG? I don't know. I want to know which Theocrafter recommended this team because this is not a good team. Again, like I said, Jingyuan, hyper carry focused unit. Support him or die. Support him or just don't bring him at all. Okay? Blade, fine. You know, Blade is fine with another carry, but you typically want the other carry to synergize with him. It doesn't matter though, but, you know, it's just for, you know, optimization's sake. But at least this team is living, so at least, you know, it's functional, but it definitely could be better. Just remove Blade or remove Jingyuan, either one which works. Next, O is the subtag for this. Dr. Ratio, oh god, this is imaginary resist. This is already not looking good. Natasha, Danhei Babitulune, Tingyin. Okay, again, I talk about the two main structures of HSR teams, multi-carry and hyper-carry. Both Dr. Ratio and Imbiber to Lune are hyper carry focused units, and you're clearly having trouble with sustaining too, so maybe Natasha isn't the best at this. But aside from that, Ting Yun is also a hyper carry focused support. She doesn't work well with dual carry setups unless, you know, it's very specific, like Blade, who doesn't actually need her energy. Yeah, stick to a lane. Again, like I said, remember the 2 team archetypes. Stick to a lane. This is I don't know what this is. Black Swan, Dr. Ratio, Gepard, Natasha. Okay, I could see the logic with Black Swan and Dr. Ratio, because Dr. Ratio wants debuffs, and Black Swan can give Arcana and Death Shred from her skill, so that's already 2, and Dr. Ratio could provide 3 with the effect res down. So this is actually, you know, it makes sense. So yeah, at least there's that, but unfortunately, I think this is a result of the boss just hitting too hard that they were forced to run another sustain instead of another support, so I can't really fault them for that. I don't know what the team they would have run if that wasn't the case. For now, I'm just gonna give the benefit of the doubt and say this is a good team. Unfortunately, the fight hitting hard cut the possibilities of having a better team than this, so let's move on. Whoa, Shepard, Natasha, March 7th, and Jing Yuan. Wow, that's a triple sustain team. This is not simulated universe, my friend. Well, it would make sense why you were fighting the boss for hours if this is your team, but again, March is even dead. I guess this person is just severely underleveled, because even, you know, max level players had a bit of a rough time with this fight from what I remember. So yeah, I think this poor dude just didn't have a choice, and even when he was presented with a choice, he just couldn't do it because the boss was just bullshit to him. Moving on. I'm not gonna, you know, make fun of you anymore. Y'all, my Hua Hua has that. She'll beat him. Trust. Hua Hua's the only survivor. Oh, this is alright. This is actually a bit of a meta team, I could see. Silver Wolf provides defense down, good debuffs for Imbiber to Lune. And what's better is that she applies imaginary weakness, which makes Danhe Imbiber to Lune hit for more crit damage. And since Sparkle is there, Sparkle adds an attack up buff whenever there's another quantum character aside from her. So Silver Wolf being there is actually already an attack up in and of itself. And Sparkle is providing enough SP for Silver Wolf and Danhe Imbiber to Lune. So this is actually a very, very, very good team. I like this team. This is just as good as the Jingliu Blade team we saw earlier. Unfortunately, Hua Hua again comes to the rescue, I guess, of she's just not that strong enough of a sustain for this type of fight where the boss easily one-shots you, and her ultimate isn't a big, you know, big burst heal to every party member. So what ends up happening is the boss gets 2 turns in a row and Hua Hua has no way to defend herself against it. So yeah, Sag, great team though, great team. The last team, Himeko, Zila, March 7th, and Luocha. Luocha is CC res, that is scary. Well, at least you cleared, but what the... I mean, same advice, stick to the lane, you know, stick to one lane for these types of units. Himeko Herta works well in pure fiction, but in this single target boss, of course not. Zila isn't a unit that particularly likes this fight because of the ads, but it's probably out of necessity. It's probably the only other 5-star they had except for Dr. Ratio, and they probably thought, well, there's imaginary resist, it would probably take longer, and that's a fair assessment. So I still wouldn't run Zila over the other free options, but I wouldn't run both of them at the same time either. Like, I would probably just bring another support, and you know, these are 2 hyper carry focused units, except for Himeko. She could be a dual carry unit in pure fiction, but not much else. Like, anybody could be a dual carry in pure fiction, actually, now that I think about it. So yeah, stick to a lane. I think that's it. Yeah, that's all the teams. I guess the lesson that you could be learning from this is that level your characters, because if you lack enough defensive stats, which is, you know, basically just leveling, then you get one-shotted and you might be forced to run less damage to compensate for it, which is not it doesn't feel good at all. I guess we also learned about the types of teams in HSR, the hyper-carry and the multi-carry teams, and some units just aren't suited for one or the other. Yeah, that's all, I guess. I hope this video helped you to learn team building better. Like, subscribe, do the all stuff, and I've been talking for a very long time. See ya, guys. Bye bye.